Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking decades of scientific, psychological, and sociological data to discover the literal building blocks of a fulfilling life. If you've ever wondered what actually matters in the long run, well, you are absolutely in the right place. Let's look at the hard evidence.
We're kicking things off with the ultimate human question, right? Is it our genetics? Maybe it's our bank account. Or is it something entirely different that makes us thrive? For centuries, philosophers have debated this, but today, we actually have the hard data to answer it.
And here is an incredibly emphatic answer from an 80-year Harvard study. Dr. Robert Waldinger, the study's director, puts it pretty bluntly. Connection is quite literally a matter of life and death. Isolation and loneliness, they degrade our bodies, just like a pack-a-day smoking habit. Seriously. But why? How does human connection actually build a better life?
So here's our map for this explainer. First, the biology of bonding. Second, our psychological need to belong. Third, the secret to aging well. And fourth, building society's social capital. Let's jump into Section 1, the biology of bonding, going inside the medial amygdala network.
Through combined MRI and PET scans, researchers actually mapped out what happens in an affiliating brain, specifically looking at the medial amygdala network. Check this out. When a mother connects with her infant, her brain literally spikes in dopamine. That's the ultimate reward chemical lighting up within regions like the nucleus accumbens. Basically, her brain is chemically rewarding her just for connecting with her child. And looking at these scans of the right pallidum and nucleus accumbens, it proves that human connection isn't just poetry, It's a hardwired chemical process. When a mother looks at her own child versus an unfamiliar child, the dopamine response in these specific right hemisphere regions goes completely off the charts. We are, quite literally, biologically wired to be rewarded by social affiliation.
Now, the crucial point here is that this powerful dopamine release isn't just random. It's triggered by what researchers call synchrony. Mother-infant synchrony is this active, responsive engagement between parent and child. It's kind of like a dance. When the baby coos, the mother smiles and speaks, she dynamically adjusts to the infant's cues. And the fascinating part? The mothers who showed the highest levels of this behavioral synchrony were the exact same mothers who had the highest dopamine responses. So connection absolutely requires active, reciprocal engagement.
Moving on to Section 2, our need to belong, from the cradle to the playground.
And this brings us perfectly into attachment theory. Psychologist John Bowlby defined this concept way back in the 1950s, and he revealed a massive paradigm shift. He found that human infants are biologically driven to seek out psychological connection, care, and responsiveness over and above even basic food and sustenance. Let that sink in. We don't just need to be fed, we desperately need to belong and feel safe. To actually measure this need to belong, Mary Ainsworth designed the famous strange situation experiment. It's a fascinating little procedure for observing a toddler's nervous system in action. Basically, the caregiver leaves the room, a stranger enters, and then the caregiver finally returns. Researchers watched super closely. How did the child manage that sudden stress? And more importantly, how did they reconnect when their safe person came back? Well, depending on the child's reaction, researchers mapped our core relationship behaviors into 4 distinct patterns: secure, insecure avoidant, insecure ambivalent, and disorganized attachment. And what's truly incredible here is that these early patterns often dictate how we form relationships as adults. If you felt safely connected as a child, you likely feel secure in your adult relationships today. But if your early need to belong was unmet, you might feel like an isolated, ugly duckling, constantly fearing rejection in your adult life. Our childhood wiring completely sets the stage for our adult connections. All right, Section 3, the secret to aging well, diving into 8 decades of data. 80. That is the number of years researchers tracked 268 Harvard men and 456 Boston inner-city residents. This is the Harvard study of adult development, and it's literally one of the world's longest and most comprehensive studies of adult life. From the Great Depression all the way to the modern day, scientists tracked every single detail of these men's lives, their careers, their physical health, their marriages, and their overall mindsets. And here is their most staggering revelation. When researchers crunched the data to see what actually predicted healthy aging, it wasn't what you'd think. The warmth and satisfaction of your relationships at age 50 predicts your physical health as an 80-year-old far better than your physical cholesterol levels do. Seriously, just let that sink in for a second. Your social bonds protect your body better than your lipid profile. Unbelievable, right? Drawing from the studies, psychiatrist George Volant identified these 6 factors for healthy aging. Now, while habits like physical activity and avoiding smoking are obviously on the list, no surprise there, the data emphatically shows that having a stable marriage and secure relationships actually protects our brains. It delays mental decline and even helps us cope with physical pain. The men who really leaned into their relationships, they lived longer, happier lives. Meanwhile, the loners sadly experienced much earlier physical and mental deterioration.
Finally, let's look at Section 4, Building Society's Social Capital, and moving up together. So zooming out a bit, the crucial point is that our individual ties actually scale up into collective social capital. Social capital is essentially the tangible benefit you get from the people you know. And it turns out this is one of the single strongest predictors of upward economic mobility. When you have relationships across different socioeconomic backgrounds, you gain access to job opportunities, mentorship, and just vital community resources that you wouldn't have otherwise. The Gates Foundation actually outlines these 3 pillars of economic mobility. Achieving this mobility relies heavily on building what they call bridging relationships. You see, it's not just about knowing people exactly like you. It's about forming connections that expand your network into totally new areas. But here is the big challenge. In our modern world, we are seeing a steep decline in civic engagement. So, where do we actually go to build these bridging relationships nowadays? Well, we go to third places. These are the physical spaces outside of your home, which is considered your first place, and your work, which is your second place. We're talking about local parks, public libraries, recreation centers, and those little community cafes. Local governments and communities can directly foster this vital social capital by investing heavily in these neighborhood third places. They basically serve as natural containers where spontaneous dialogue happens. Diverse groups of people just bump into each other, and the trust that fuels economic mobility can truly, authentically grow. As we wrap up this explainer, we've looked at the dopamine pathways in the brain, the psychology of childhood attachment, 80 years of lifespan data, and the community structures that literally build wealth. So I want to leave you with this thought. Knowing that connection is the definitive data-backed answer to a good life, what intentional step are you going to take today? What third place will you visit today to build your connections? Thanks for joining me, and keep exploring.